Good afternoon. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive. I'm joined today by the Chairman of the Board of Legislators, the Honorable Ben Boykin, and also by Legislator Kitley Covill, who is the author of the bill that we have with us here today to discuss. I'm also joined by our County Attorney, John Nona, who is available to help whenever we get to questions so that we can try to help you with some specifics. We're here today to advocate for a bill, our administration advocating for a bill which is being introduced by Legislator Covill, which aims to strengthen the ethics laws which govern those who serve the people of Westchester County. We've all been sent here to serve, and I think sometimes, the perception is that either the individuals forget that or that the public doesn't think we're focused on that. We seem to be sometimes focused on other things. But it's also important within this political climate to make sure that elected leaders put trust above their own direct interest. And by tightening the ethics laws along the lines that Legislator Covill and the team has worked out, we think this establishes a greater sense of confidence on behalf of people. The proposed legislation from the legislator applies to all current and some former officers and employees of the county. It has a stated purpose that sets forth very clearly and in a very comprehensive code of ethics to ensure both the reality and the appearance of integrity in county government and to thereby foster public confidence in county government. This legislation, ethics are stronger, involved in training, and whistleblower protections are enhanced for county employees. This legislation also furthers goals that Chairman Boykin has on behalf of running the legislature, that I have on behalf of the administration. So we're working together, I think, in a very positive, cooperative way. You don't see that at every level of government. But in this particular case, the motivation and the drive by Legislator Covill and the work that we've done together between the legislature and the executive have produced a document. And both legislator and the chairman will have a chance to talk a little bit about the substance of that. So first, Legislator Kitley Covill, the author of this bill.
Thank you. So I want to start by thanking the people that helped me do this, which was the Board of Ethics. County Executive Latimer appointed people who are robustly interested in looking at the ethics law and really seeing where the challenges and weak spots were. And we were all really tireless in working for that. So it's important to acknowledge that you have partners along with the county executive and the Board of Legislators, the people who did the hard work as volunteers. But one of the reasons this is sort of a signature piece of legislation for me is that when I first started in government, I was told by my boss that when you start in government, you put on the same thing like a Yankee uniform. You are now in the public eye, and you better conduct yourself like you're in the public eye at all times. And I think a strong, robust code of ethics really gives guideposts as to what municipal officials and municipal employees need to do. We've tried to streamline a lot of what was in there. It used to refer to in the old laws, check the general municipal law. Well, most people don't have a copy of the general municipal law in their pocket. So we've put those relevant provisions into the law. We also have had questions about the volunteer and employee filing form for disclosure. We tried to help with that by making it a little clearer, having the questions not for tripping you up, but for actual compliance. And in general, that is what you look for in ethics. So we've tried to make sure that any questions that will come up can be directed to the county attorney's office, where they have a special counsel who is well-versed in ethics law. He also helped us guide us through this process. So I'm really pleased to be able to be sponsoring this legislation after it took, 15 months. Thank you. And Chairman Boykin, I think you want to make... Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
I just want to highlight that Legislator Covill is a lawyer by profession. She has previously served as an assistant county attorney in a prior administration, and she also served as the Inspector General for the city of Yonkers. So she brought to this task not merely the fact that she's a legislator today, but that she has legal and work experience particularly in this area of ethics. And I think we owe you a debt of gratitude for taking all of those skills and putting them together. Chairman Boykin, who's going to speak next, has a unique situation. He has served in 3 separate legislative bodies, and in each of those bodies, he's chaired them. He was a member of the White Plains School Board, and at one point became president of the school board. He was a member of the White Plains Common Council, and was president of the Common Council, now a member of the county legislature, and he now chairs the county legislature. And that's important, because when we set these policies in place and we change the law, having an understanding of what represents the potential for conflict or the potential for ethical violation can depend on certain circumstances. And the wider your area of experience, the better you are to deal with it. So as this piece of legislation goes to the Board of Legislators, the chairman will supervise the direction of it, and I'd like for him to share his thoughts about it now. Ben?
Thank you, County Executive Latimer, and thank you, Legislator Kitley Covill, for really working and sponsoring this legislation. I know when you first came on, you said, we've got to look at our ethics laws and we need to change them, make them clear, and where we need to, make them tougher. I understand ethics. As the county executive said, we work very well together, the executive branch and the legislative branch. Having served in 3 levels of government, I worked on ethics at the White Plains School Board. At the White Plains City Council, I worked on ethics. Here, my first appointment was the chair of the appointments committee, and we had some ethical issues there about individuals serving on the ethics board. So we worked on that here. So now we are at the point where it's time to look at our ethics, update them, and bring them into the 21st century. Ethics are important because it says what you do and how you do it, and when you do it, and what you do. Those are important things. I've lived my full life of ethics. As you know, I'm a CPA, and the only course I'm required to take each year is an ethics course. In North Carolina, where I'm certified, I have 40 hours a year. Part of that is each and every year I must take an ethics course. So I understand ethics from a very long time and the importance of it. We look forward to this bill being introduced to the Board of Legislators, taking it to the appropriate committees, and making sure we, through our due diligence, will move forward to get it soon adopted into law. So I'm very pleased to be here to support this bill that we'll be soon introducing. Thank you very much.
Now, just for procedural purposes, the bill is a local law which requires a public hearing. So as the committee or committees that the chairman refers the bill to, there'll be some discussion. And if there is any amendment to the bills, those discussions will happen. Amendments may occur. And then at that point in time, when they're ready to have a public hearing, the Board of Legislators will set a public hearing. It'll be open to the public. Right now, we're working in the virtual world, and it is still by gubernatorial executive order appropriate for us to have electronic method of communication and an electronic method of meeting. So until things change, that opportunity will exist through electronic purposes, virtual purposes, to hold a public hearing when the board determines it's the right period of time. And then at that period of time that the board has a final product, after the public hearing, they vote on it. If it passes, then it would be sent to me for my signature. My intent is to sign it into law when it comes back, but the board has every opportunity to listen, to debate, and to make any changes they see fit in this legislation. So, excuse me, there is a bit of a process here. But I think what's important overall, and I'm going to just keep John Nona on notice that we may ask you to explain certain provisions of the law if you're conversant, depending on the questions that come up, is that we understand, all of us understand, that we have got to do more if we're going to have public confidence in government. There's a perception, and I hear it as I talk to people every day. I've been in government any number of years. People believe that those of us in government don't get it, that we think that government is really our personal plaything, that we use this for our benefit. And those of us inside, particularly at this level of government and at the local levels of government, it isn't what people think, but it doesn't matter what we think. It matters what they think. And the perception they have is that this is an opportunity for those of us to do well for ourselves. And what we try to accomplish in an ethics law along these lines, that Legislator Covill uses her experience to help shape, and that John Noon and his legal team help put into final form, is to be able to show that there is a public face to these things and a process to go through, and areas where people have to exempt themselves from voting, or where they have to publicly identify that they have some involvement that would, potentially create a perception, if not a reality, of conflict. And for those of you who are here in this room and those who are remote from the media, that there is that transparency, so that when you inquire about things and decisions made, you're inquiring on behalf of the people that you communicate with, the people of Westchester County. So all of those factors come into doing this legislation. It is a significant piece of work. I know you don't always judge things by how many pages there are, but that's a significant piece of legislation. I don't know how many of you were in college or high school and you'd ask the professor, how many pages does the paper have to be? And the professor would say, as many as necessary to make your point. And then you'd hear that and you'd say, well, yeah, it's going to be 5 pages, 10 pages, 20, what's acceptable? Well, what's acceptable is whatever it takes. And this is the product and the work. And we're very proud that Kitley could work through these things with the Ethics Board, that John and his team could craft it together. And I'm going to hand this to Kitley as a conveyance, which comes through the executive branch as well, but is really the work of your fine effort, Kitley. And so I thank you, congratulate you for it. So this is yours to submit to your ceremonially submit. Actually, I'm done with it now. I submitted it to you. I'm waiting to see it come back so I can sign it. And at that point, John, do you want to highlight any of the provisions of the law that you think would be helpful for people to understand?
There's one provision I think.
Okay, please, and then we'll open it up to questions for anybody who has them.
One provision that's important that was, I think, made more robust in this draft, in this proposed legislation, is a county employee can ask the Ethics Board for an advisory opinion if they're concerned about a transaction they're involved in or a vote they're going to take. They can ask the Ethics Board to give them an advisory opinion. And the Ethics Board has an outside counsel who's Steve Leventhal, who is one of the state's experts on government ethics. So that's an important feature and ability for someone to ask if they have a question rather than do something and later find out they have violated the ethics code. I thought it was important to point that out.
So, and just before we open it up to questions, let me give you an example of how an ethics law affects an individual. I was a member of the Board of Legislators for 13 years in the 1990s and briefly in the following decade. And during my tenure as a county legislator, the front end of it, I was also national director of sales for a corporation, and we did business, and I held as national accounts major accounting firms. Some of what was then the big 8 accounting firms, they've winnowed down to a smaller number. And in dealing with those firms on behalf of my company for business, as a member of the County Board of Legislators, I came to a point where we had to vote for an accounting firm to come and do the auditing work of Westchester County. And so I contacted my company, and then I contacted the Board of Ethics, and I said, what are my concerns here? Because I do business with other accounting firms, not the one that was being recommended. Am I in any kind of jeopardy? And the law was vague. It was vague on that point. So I got a letter from my company. I recused myself of that vote. It was 1993, I think, or 1994. But those kind of ethical things happen. Now, if I cast a vote for or against a particular company with no direct correlation, anybody in the community could say, but you did business with one of their competitors. Doesn't that influence your vote? And so the law has to be clear, so that in my case as a legislator then, that I had a clear understanding of what I had to do, what I should do, what I shouldn't do in order to do it right. And so not only for the elected officials, but for the appointed officials, because there's a lot of power in the hands of appointed officials in this county. We have many decisions that do not come before the Board of Legislators at all and only come before my desk at the very end of a process. And when we award contracts and there's bidding documents and so forth. And except for the 17 legislators in the county executive, we're the only 18 elected officials. We're the only people that you, the voter, can hold directly accountable for an act. And yet in our responsibilities, there's any number of other people that could convey a benefit for the county, that could authorize an action to be taken or not taken. And so an ethics law has to take all of those things into account. So with that, I'm going to stop the presentation, take any questions we have. We have members of the press who are in the room. And then after that, we'll go to Catherine Chaffee for any remote questions. So I guess Martin Wilbur from the Examiner.
For Kitley, were there certain things that you recognized that was missing
Well, in particular, when a county employee leaves the employment of the county and goes to a business that the county has done business with right away, there's in the provision, in the ethics law, and the same one here, there's a year you must wait before you go to work for another company, obviously to avoid any policy-making decisions that you made here that would obviously affect then your landing pad in the company. And typically that would happen, but people would ask for a waiver from that provision. And that was something that was stark to me, was so unclear. People didn't understand what they were waiving, what they were asking for, or what anybody was actually waiving the provisions of, because the provisions themselves were not very clear. And I think that has really been tightened here. The only other provision that I think may be controversial but is important, is a big change, is that no one that is a county employee will sit on the ethics board. That was a bone of great discussion in the ethics board. We'll see how that plays itself out, but it is a big change. There are other more minor sort of changes, but everything was with an eye toward making it clear, because the point of an ethics code is not to get you, not to gotcha, but to allow you to understand what compliance looks like and what ethical behavior looks like.
And does this cover all elected officials and employees?
Correct. And some former employees, in that they may have left and asked for the waiver while they were on their way out. So it's pretty narrow that way.
Is it known from the last time the ethics code was updated for the county?
You do know that? Okay. It was long.
It was updated when I was a county legislator, when the state controller found that we had some deficiencies in our ethics law, the main one being no one was reviewing the financial disclosure forms that would come in. County employees and elected officials have to file financial disclosure forms, and no one was reviewing them. And the state controller required at that point that we have an independent lawyer, independent outside person review all the financial disclosure forms, and that's when we made a change to the ethics code. That was 10 years ago. So it's about time we took a look back at it and see where it needed further clarifications and needed to be beefed up.
Is that like a typical interval of when it should be looked at, or?
I don't think there's any standard or best practices for that.
Good.
Yes, sure.
Ms. Paul wants to know, why is it important that you guys do this now? Have you seen, kind of similar to this question, your question, sorry, were there any lapses in the current law that you're trying to stop? Were there any issues with the current law that you're trying to change, I guess, with these stronger ethics of ethics?
Nothing had lapsed. I can tell you that for sure. I will say when I came in, I had a lot of questions that were asked of me, because I have had a compliance and ethics in my background, about how to fill out the form, for example. It also goes to volunteers who have policy. We've tidied up that list. It used to go to every volunteer on every committee in the county. Now it'll only go to the committees that have policy-making decisions. But it is a confusing, and feels like if I check this box wrong on the disclosure form, somehow I'll have a problem. So that was clearly an issue. But also, I think one of the things that I think I mentioned when I first spoke was that ethics are challenging right now from the public perception. And I think that when County Executive Latimer came in, I came in at the same time. I think there was a meeting of the minds that ethics are really important. We really have to ensure that we are transparent in everything we do. There is nobody who sits in this room or any place in this building that I believe is here because they want to put money in their pocket, but you certainly do not want to make sure that there is a very tight ethics law, so people are reminded of that. And there will be robust training for every single employee in the county on ethics and what this ethics code looks like now.
Let me add one thing to that as well. The analogy is always, when it's raining, you realize that your roof needs to be fixed. And the rain's pouring in, and you say, well, as soon as it gets sunny, I'm going to fix the roof. And then when it gets sunny, you forget about it. This is an example, which you see rarely, but is an important way to think about things, is fixing the roof while the sun is shining. We don't have a major issue that's at hand, a major scandal at hand. So now correct the law, make it very clear, the training that Kitley talked about that would go through the full system so everybody understands what represents the proper behavior. Avoid it when the rain does come so that we're properly protected. Any other questions? Okay, we're good. Any remote questions? Very good. Then I thank you all for your time and attendance. I want to particularly again thank Legislator Kitley Covill for her authorship of this legislation. It's really a great accomplishment. To John Nona and the team in the Law Department for helping craft this, and our friends on the Board of Ethics that will contribute to this, and of course Chairman Boykin for his leadership in the legislature. And as this works its way through the legislative process, I'm sure Ben will see it again. Yes. So, thank you all very much. Have a wonderful day. Stay safe.